Hi, this is Paul, and today I have with me HoeMath, who I actually I found his channel through Rick, who said there's this guy on the internet and you should see his videos. And he starts sending me some of these videos, and I watched a bunch of them. I've commented on a couple of them in some of my videos, and we have a mutual acquaintance who wrote me and said, "Oh, would you like to talk to him?" I said, "I'd love to talk to him," and so here we are. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing yourself with us.
Of course. It's always a pleasure to be shared.
Okay. Well, I usually start these things by asking questions about your life. And again, don't feel pressure to say anything that you don't want to say. Oops, I lost you.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Do you hear me?
I hear you. Yep. No, I guess I didn't lose you. I just lost the camera.
Interesting. Okay. I turned it off and back on. Should I log out and back in?
Yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
Oh, here we go. Is it
Oh,
start video? Okay,
yep.
there we go.
There it's working. All right,
Great.
good. So tell me a little bit about the home you grew up in. And of course, you can be evasive about any locations or
Sure.
anything that'd be identifiable.
Sure. Pretty much just standard middle class life. I grew up a little bit outside of a small city and just went to public school and lived that basic life, Nintendo and toys and TV growing up in the 80s.
Mhm.
Um, I've throughout life had a lot of friends, visited a lot of places that were much more fortunate than me and much less. And so I just kind of learned gradually, like, oh, I had it pretty mid.
Hmm.
I had it pretty middle, and there were some nice things and some not so nice things. I don't know what you mean exactly about the home I grew up in, like socioeconomic. Yeah.
Any religious involvement in your house?
Uh,
Did your parents go to church? Did you go to
uh-huh.
church?
hmm Church was important to my parents, especially my mother. My grandparents all went to church all the way through their lives. We went to it wasn't Sunday school. I think they called it catechism or CCD or something,
Okay.
where we would go to a Saturday, it was Catholic, grew up
Okay.
Catholic. So we went to a Catholic church and had ate the cracker every week and all that stuff. And that was something that was important to me as a child.
Hmm.
Um, it was, my understanding of it evolved over time.
Hmm.
But I was a little God warrior when I was about 8, and I
Oh.
would I would tell my friends who didn't go to church that they would, God didn't like that and all that. You got to have the right God. So I've always been a bit of a proselytizer. It's just about what that has changed.
Hmm. So when did that sort of change for you? Was there an event that sort of turned it for you,
Yeah,
or was it sort of
yeah.
a gradual thing?
There was one day where everything kind of flipped, and
Hmm.
it was I was always like the smart kid in school,
Hmm.
and I had relied on um, being the smart kid was what was going to get me through life.
Hmm.
That's going to get you more rewards faster than everyone else.
Hmm.
Everybody celebrated me for it and said, "You're going to do so great." When
Hmm.
I was 12 years old, they started, increasing the amount of work. They put me in the AP classes and everything. I was in the advanced math with only 5 other kids,
Hmm.
and it was more work. And
Hmm.
I didn't get anything for it. And so I started asking questions. I was like, why am I working harder? Like I thought I was supposed to be advanced. Why am I doing more work than everyone else? When do I get time to play and be myself and live a self-directed life? And the adults around me, my parents and teachers particularly, would answer the questions very repetitively and very coldly with you got to do this, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you move. And I would say, well, what is it going to get better in high school? Is it going to get better in college? And they say, no, you do this until you get to high school. You do high school till you get to college. Then you do college till you get a job. And then your job is hard too. And then that's hard until you die. And then everything's hard. And so I had a little bit of a crisis. I remember, hyperventilating and understanding suddenly that the adults around me don't know what's going on, that
Hmm.
they're doing what they're told and that I'm doing what I'm told. And I want to live a self-directed life. I want to do things that are important to me and not just follow along. I didn't have a whole lot of I guess you could say I didn't have a whole lot of respect for just the general beliefs that society holds. Just because people believe something didn't make me respect it or appreciate it or adopt it.
Hmm.
And that was something that differentiated me from others around me pretty early in life. So when people told me, do this, do this, do this, I would say, why? What do I get? Where's the demonstration of what I get?
Hmm.
And when that didn't materialize for me, when I started asking questions, I sort of turned around against school and church, and I started not doing my homework, and I dropped out of the AP classes, and I would, you know, get the truancy or whatever. I wouldn't show up for school, and I stopped taking the bus, even started riding my bike, and just differentiated myself from the whole thing as much as possible. And it sort of set the stage for a life on the fringes somewhat.
Hmm. How did your parents respond to that?
Not very much at all. They just
Really?
sort of, yeah, they just sort of saw it as just something that kids do. Kids are difficult, and they didn't really process it in a way that was all that involved. They
Hmm.
just sort of saw me not liking it, and they said, "Well, they repeated the same thing that happened before it. I was the good kid doing the good things, and then I started not doing the good things, and they would just repeat the same things. You got to do your stuff, because then you got to get to the next thing." And it was sort of like very distancing for me to not be able to relate to my parents in that way.
Hmm.
So they remained somewhat uninvolved, and I just sort of floundered through high school. And um, in the early part of college, also, I designed my class load for low effort until I started caring about what I was doing. So
Hmm.
lasted for a while.
So as a 12-year-old and then as a high school kid, you clearly saw that this conveyor belt of life that everyone is
Yeah,
sort of following along.
yeah,
You're not down for that.
right,
But you did notice, okay, you go to the AP classes and you're working harder. What kinds of rewards
right.
would have connected with you then?
I guess I was looking for someone to tell me what they were because I
Mm,
didn't think I was going to get any money or anything. Although I kind of asked my parents, shouldn't I be getting more rewards for doing, special work? But I thought maybe free time or being given some sort of power or some sort of position, like I can create something for myself or choose what direction I want to go in. Some kind of an advancement of ability to
mhm.
create or control my own life. And when I didn't get it, I got it by sort of exiting.
Right. You went a different way in order to get what you wanted to get instead of just sort of following the communal conveyor belt as
Right.
specified by everyone else around you.
Right. And that's something that continued all throughout life, where, when something wasn't going the right way, I would withdraw more rather than participating more.
Now, well, what happened with respect to, it sounds like you went to public school.
Hmm.
What happened with respect to church attendance? Was there a time that your parents just basically said, well, you can go or don't want to go, or did it just sort of stop, or what was
Yeah,
that like for you?
I stopped going and I got, my parents punished me with like no dessert. Um, and that was basically their only attempt. It was a food-based morality. And they said, you got to go to church or else we'll take away, the comforts. And I just said, okay, fine, I'll go without it. I just really didn't want to keep going. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
In the Catholic Church, they have confirmation, which is something that I guess where I'm from, kids would get a lot for that. It was like the Catholic bar mitzvah or something.
Oh,
And the kids would, when they went through it, they would get presents and they would get money, like sometimes as much as $10,000 from all their relatives, like, hey, here's a big gift for you doing
wow.
the thing. And I didn't go through that either. Like there
Mm,
were, I think my sister did it and got quite a bit of reward for it.
huh.
So I rebelled against that, and I said, nope, not doing it. Never got confirmed, never really began to care about religion in the traditional sense
Yeah.
after that.
Did you do a lot of doodling while you were going through the motions in these classes?
Yeah, there was a lot of scribbles and writing on the, I would write on the edge of the book. Um, in the margins. There was one time where there was the numbers on the side of the book, and I would, write other ones in, and the teachers wouldn't know which book was which. Uh, so yeah, little bit of chaos. I would draw little whatever characters or the invisible cube or whatever,
Yeah.
and
So,
it was, yeah, a lot of self distraction for sure.
so what's your relationship between thinking and doodling? Because I mean, your videos are full of it, and what makes your videos interesting are your diagrams and pictures because we can see the way you're thinking by these things that you're drawing.
Yeah, that never really became a thing for me until I began a professional career, until after college. So the doodles were just kind of a distraction. Like I would draw a dragon or whatever, um, just to not have to pay attention to class. And the idea of the doodles and the drawings being something that are used to explain, that was something that kind of came from marketing work I did, where I would understand
Oh,
that when you create a document or whatever, advertisement for people, you've got to have demonstrations that are like clear and emotionally compelling for what are you going to get if you do this?
right.
You can't just give people words. There was something that I read a really long time ago about how if they come out with a new law or they do some kind of legal thing, they you get your newspaper, right? And you open it up to page 30, whatever, and somewhere on the page, there's like a little notification that says, may it be known that da.
Yep.
And they said, on this page, there's like a half page ad for shoes.
Right.
They want you to know about the shoes.
Right.
They don't really care if you know about this. This one's
Right.
much more important, but they don't mention it. And that one, among others, stuck with me. And it was like, if something's important in life, you really have to present it in a way that makes people go,
Um,
"Oh, I get it.
yeah.
I understand." So the visual presentation is something that I've always thought about. It's something I've been thinking about for years. Um, I just never had a venue for it until I had a video blow up.
So would you describe yourself more as an auditory thinker or a visual thinker?
More visual for sure. My imagination is pretty potent. When I lie down at night, I can see all kinds of stuff that I had, no idea where it comes from. Um, Definitely not auditory.
Okay.
I think in terms of sensations and emotions, and definitely visual things. I've always been able to envision, the house that I want to build.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
a, it's got a spire. I want to, I want to have a tall part of the house and then like a deck on top you can come out of the door here and then be able to sunbathe. And I wanted to live in a, castle like
Yeah.
place in the woods.
Yeah.
So I've always had, visual images for that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, not even really sure what an auditory thinker would mean, like people who think in terms of words.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Sort of track work. Well, it's never clear because, of course, most of our thinking is below the surface and
of
things,
course.
but for some people, words emerge, and for some people, images seem to emerge. And so,
Yeah.
I-
Yeah, definitely strongly much more image thinker.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned in college, you were sort of okay, so people knew you were smart, and so then you got to go to college, and but then you mentioned that at least at some point in college things turned, and whereas before you just certainly weren't buying sort of this conveyor belt that you saw
Mhm.
everybody else going, a new motivation emerged, it sounded like. Is that fair?
Yeah, it was really kind of the idea of taking my studies seriously. What I wanted to do was work in mass media. So what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing now is it's kind of a manifestation of that.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that I could, like John Stewart was a person who was a role model for me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of being one person who is in a place who can reach many.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And your ideas are powerful and influential, and the way that you perform them, as Jon Stewart was funny.
Yeah.
Um, that sort of thing was something that has always drawn me and something that I've always been going for and working towards. And the idea of sitting in just cubicles and being told to do, like I've had that the typical dumb boss,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of just doing what I'm told by someone who doesn't even understand what I'm doing, and just like that's my whole life, sitting in a cubicle with a little screen. It's just so miserable. Like I just couldn't do it. I had that job for a little while, and I just saved up my money and left so I could go pursue doing this again.
Okay. Okay. So right after college, what did you get a degree in? Marketing, you said, or
It was communications was my first degree,
okay.
communication sciences. And it was very interesting because it was a very scientific approach to communication. It was all about what they had discovered about the ways that people send and receive messages. So I remember I took a persuasion class and they showed how certain types of people like certain types of images more and use certain colors in certain ways and certain words and fonts. And it made me think about all the little details about what people see and how it influences them in ways that they don't have any idea about.
Hmm.
People always think, oh, advertising doesn't work on me. But yeah, it means that means that if you say that, it means it does because you're
Yeah.
not paying attention. So all the people who want to believe, oh yeah, I'm in control of my own mind. No, you're in the least control. So I've been thinking about that, for quite some time, and I've been, reading a lot of books and resources on how that works, and books on persuasion. I got into spirituality and the occult too, because there's a lot of overlap between psychology and spirituality,
Yep.
and there's a lot of sort of muddy, you know halfway points in between psychology and spirituality, and like you could say that people are doing spell casting using words, like you
Yep.
spell a word and then people will be under the spell. So words are very controlling to people. Words evoke images, and you use images along with it. And it's again the idea of this one source being a place that has so much power over people. I wanted
Mm.
to always wanted to be the person who had that power, because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like how it was being used. It was just
Mm-hmm.
being used to make people fat and dumb and blind them from what was going on in the world. And I find that atrocious.
So what kind of so how did you sort of get in touch with spirituality? Was there a particular book or a particular movie or a friend, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, that's a great question with a really complex answer. I know that early in life, maybe around, after this 12 point where I got really upset at life, I started looking elsewhere for meaning and
Mm-hmm.
outside of my culture. And, I started watching anime because it was not from
Yeah.
America and all that sort of thing. And I kind of got into Buddhism a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, a very little bit, just in the sense that I heard about meditation and it sounded like something cool, something that cool people do, is like you just sit there and look at your own mind. And somewhere around 12 to 16, I decided, I was going to be a person who was deeper and looked deeper into myself and into life. And it didn't really materialize until after college.
Mm-hmm.
I had, I got out of college. I had a really bad job and really had really bad relationship. And right when that ended, right about 23, 24, I like revisited that time. And I said, well, I've
Mm.
always meant to do this. And I have all this time off now, and I've had the unemployment from the 2008 market crash. So I just started meditating all day and reading books about it. And I read The Art of War, and I got into integral theory, and just started uh, observing my mind and my life a lot more. And that was a very big spike, a very big change in who I was. And after that point, once you start reading something like integral theory, they give you so many keywords. Like you read a
Yeah.
few books and it's just got this.
Yeah.
And you look up all those things. And thanks to the internet, I read all about them and learned all about them. And I eventually ended up in one of these, Aleister Crowley
Mm.
magic groups.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fascinating, but also terrifying because
Hmm.
I don't really know what the soul is or what magic is or how it works, but they say things that they really do seem to mean it.
Hmm.
They say things that seem silly to rational minded people, but they do seem to mean it. And so, you're in this group that's all secretive and they don't tell you what's coming at the next level. And it's like, well, are we really just this Satanism or what are we doing? So I did that for a while and it didn't quite work for me because of it was really the same thing that happened when I was 12. It was like,
Hmm.
are you gonna tell me what's going on? Are you gonna put me in charge of anything? You just gonna have me sit here and listen to you and go through the motions and then nothing happens for me ever. So I didn't last too long there. I was in that for 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, I met a lot of interesting people through that, lots of people with different ideas and lots of misfits, lots of people who just want to, build a commune and live away from the world as you're not allowed to do, as we found out so many times.
When did you discover psychology?
I would say that psychology was interesting to me in high school,
Hmm.
and that I really discovered it in full when I was in my degree program
Okay.
um, in college. So communications is considered, I guess, an offshoot of psychology, like
Hmm.
it's applied psychology or something.
Hmm.
So when I understood how much psychology influenced what I was learning, I started thinking more about psychology proper and getting into like Maslow and
Yep.
that sort of thing and understanding what's beneath the surface, that's really the basis of my interest is what's beneath the surface of your own perception.
Yep.
Because if you don't know, then someone can manipulate it. And it really is all about power. it,
Yep.
it really is, the weapons of our time. Like you could say we're in World War III right now, and it's a psychological war.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so. What do you think those who are waging this war want?
I think that the most likely thing they want is for them and themselves and their children and their families and the people that they care about, which is a very small group, to have just total power and control and wealth, and everybody else is just a stupid, hopeless slave who
Hmm.
can't do anything, can't think, can't struggle, can't argue. You put a picture in front of them and they go, "Yep, I accept that as true. Whatever you just said on the TV is what is real now, and I'm gonna go live my life by it." And it seems to be getting more and more effective. Like I'm very disappointed in people's ability to think critically about what they're presented through the phone and through the screens.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say something like, um, slavery has never ended. We've just found different ways to convince slaves that they
Yeah.
are not slaves.
Yeah, there's that old song, what is it, like 16 tons and what do you get?
Yep.
Another day older and deeper in debt. They tell you it's a job, but they're charging you more money than you're earning, and you're working really hard. You're not getting anything for yourself. You're not increasing. I've been meaning to make a video about value,
Hmm.
based on the idea that people say high value man, high value woman. I
Yeah.
want to talk about what value really is because it's all like psychology is economic, morality is economic. It's based on the basis of morality is who gets to feel good and who has to feel bad and when and where and why and how. Our moral judgments are based on if you do this, it'll be good or it'll be bad. And how do we know? Well, it'll cause these good or bad things. And why are those good or bad? Well, because they suck. If they're bad, if they suck. And what does it mean for something to suck? It's like, well, that's an unpleasant experience. You can go do heroin, right? And that'll be super fun, but it's a poor moral decision because after you get your fun, you go lower, and then you drag other people down with you and you're breaking into their cars and stealing their stereos, and it's more people have to feel bad if you do that. So the idea of value, um it's it's I'm trying to put those ideas together. It's the psychology and morality and all this is economic because it's the way that we create value directly from the environment and trade it with each other that has to do with the quality of our lives. And people are not doing that consciously. People are doing that in ways that they are told to do that, and it reduces the value. Like people are creating more value than ever with their labor, but keeping a smaller percentage of it, and they don't seem to notice.
Hmm.
It's like bees getting their honey taken away, and they just keep doing bee things. It's like, you're getting robbed, right? And they haven't seemed to figure it out yet. It's like the amount of effort that the average person has, and family uh, uh, handing down of value too. The amount that we've put into building the world and the amount that we have to show for it are not congruent.
Hmm.
So the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer have been that's been, a central issue to my feelings about psychology, morality, spirituality
Hmm.
for a long time. I don't believe that we live in conditions where people can work hard and succeed. You have to be lucky or be in the right place in the
Yeah.
right time. Like I've worked very hard and done very well and achieved really um, things that most people could never even like wouldn't even try because they wouldn't even think, oh, that's something that I could do. I told myself I could do it. I applied myself to it. I did it well. And then people, for whatever reason, for whatever political reason, said, no, you're not allowed. You get no rewards. And so the work kind of goes in and then disappears. And then we're just right back to age 12, where it's like, why am I doing the advanced placement class? Like, why am I not just checked out?
Hmm. Well, it's fascinating because this area, now as you just sort of laid it out, and then if we move over to what your channel is primarily about, which is male-female relationships,
Mm-hmm.
because if there is a, oh my goodness, how on earth to say this? If there is a complex interchange of value,
Mm-hmm.
there's probably in some ways no higher level than between men and women, and
Right.
attempting to find a mutually satisfying context for their sharing lives.
Yeah.
So talk to me about because of course sort of how did you do in high school with the girls? Let me put my cards on the table.
Yeah.
I did not I was terrible until sort of all the way even into my after in college and late college stuff. So I'm not here to tell people how to arrange themselves when they're young because I certainly didn't know anything.
Sure, sure. So in high school, I was very unpopular in my school, but
Hmm.
as soon as I met girls who didn't know me socially, I did well. I
Oh.
guess I was just attractive and confident and all that stuff, but everybody knew me as being like the weird loser in my school. So as
Hmm.
long as I wasn't known socially, I did pretty well. I used to go on AOL Instant Messenger and just find all of the screen names. Like there was this function where you could just find all the screen names in your area for some reason. It was like
Oh.
whatever the area network was, and I would find all the ones that sounded girly and just go like ASL, 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 and that's age, sex, location, in
Oh,
case.
oh, I'm an old guy, so some of this stuff,
Yeah,
I'm not as young as some, but
yeah,
I do know what AIM is, and I do remember those days, but I didn't know what
yeah.
ASL is.
Yeah, so I would say that to all of them, and then they would respond. And if there were any, girls of an appropriate age in the area, I would just start talking to them, and that worked really well for me. I've met
Hmm.
a bunch of girls doing that, so I kind of pioneered um, online dating in that sense. So I did pretty well as long as I could be, again, like just like the whole setting the stage for my life, as long as I was away from the collective and individually and doing my own thing
Hmm.
and not relying on the whole social status thing. I did pretty well.
Hmm. And so what kind
Yeah.
were those just sort of friendships or
Oh no,
nothing?
it was like hookup culture.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. And then what at what age were you when you had sort of had your first sort of durable, so, I don't even know what language to use, going steady or just a
Yeah.
steady girlfriend?
That was started when I was 15 and it didn't last very long, but it was like someone who I would call a girlfriend, and it was not a very good quality relationship.
Hmm.
But that lasted for about 6 months, and then a short while after that, I met another girl from the instant messenger, and we started a relationship that lasted about a year. And it had its ups and downs, and I
Mhm.
learned a lot about women and all that. But I was 15, 16, 17 during that
Okay.
time. And then there was nothing else until after college because, again, I'm living in a place where everyone knows me. They see all my, personal habits. They see what a nerd I am and all that, and they go, "That guy, stay away from that guy."
Huh.
So after college, when I went back out and could be individual, could have my own place, could have my own bedroom and everything, I immediately got another girlfriend there and had the terrible relationship, the bad one that led to me having the whole crisis and going into meditation and all that.
Oh, okay. Well, what did there's a thousand ways relationships can devolve. What were some of the patterns you learned from in some of those uh frustrating early relationships?
The patterns in the early ones were mostly, it was mostly just about like what to look for and who to pick.
Hmm.
Like, some people want to have real relationships, and some people just want to feel like they're with somebody without really respecting them.
Oh.
And there were a lot of things that I did wrong. Like, one of those girls that I dated really early on had a job and I didn't, and I let her just pay for me all the time, and that got old for her. And I didn't really understand it because I thought like if we're in a relationship, then it's all our stuff or whatever. But the contribution was definitely something I learned from that one. The um, the early relationships were mostly just about like how to emotionally relate to another person in an enduring sense rather than the AOL hookup type relationship where you don't even have to be a good person or like them very much.
Yeah.
Um, and then the one after college was more about she was just a pretty bad person. Like, and I
Mm,
didn't recognize that I had had a lot of childhood abuse in my home. So
mm.
when she was real nasty to me, I just thought, oh, well, that's how people behave when they're alone. There's outside
Oh.
behavior, which is you have to be nice in front of people. But when you're at home alone, it's like, well, yeah, of course you're going to get yelled at and called names and everything. So that one was much more about um, learning that it doesn't matter how good you are to someone,
Mm.
they're not going to necessarily be good back. You just get the person that you get,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you don't get to tell them how to change if they don't want to.
Why do you think you wanted to be in relationship with a woman?
That's a great question. I wish that I didn't. It would be nice to not have that need. I wish that I was a person of low needs, but I'm not. I need a
Mm,
lot of like attention and rewards and independence and food and like I just need a lot of things.
hmm
I don't like being that kind of a high maintenance person, but I don't do great alone for long periods of time. It's good to
mm,
have somebody to spend time with. I do better if I get frequent touch. I
hmm
just don't, I start wondering what life is all about if I'm going to be sitting by myself all the time.
mm, mm. So what so then you talked a little bit about work and you learned a little bit of marketing and you had a degree in communications and your personal life, you've got ups and downs with respect to these relationships. What was your clearly you learned what how many sitcoms in the 90s about people in cubicles was
Hmm.
trying to message, which is yeah, uh office cubicles and stockyards have a lot in common.
Stockyards?
Like cows and pens.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. Okay.
so you very much wanted to not be in a pen, to not be in a cubicle. And
Hmm.
so what were some of your strategies to get out of that? I mean, it sounds like you were thrifty with your money. You sound fairly disciplined and organized so you could save money, which could give you a sense of give you some flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So my strategies for it were not really all that strong. I've never been that much of a businessman. When I got out of college, I just tried to find a job. I got my degree and I applied to a bunch of jobs that
Yeah.
required that degree, and that just went very poorly. I think I applied to 1,600 jobs before I got one, and I only got it because I had a connection. And it was a work from home job, and I went to go live in New York City, and it's a long story. I couldn't really the job was very abusive of our time. So
Mm-hmm.
they told us that we were independent contractors or that we were exempt from overtime, but really they were working us like employees. And
Yep.
so we got, taken advantage of pretty bad. And there were, times in my life that I had that regular office job, although one was work from home, one was in an office. And when I was in those, I was just feeling like any possible way to escape, but I don't know how to escape. It was just like
Mm-hmm.
maybe a better job.
Yep.
um, I always wanted to do something different, but I wasn't really sure what, like musician or comedy or, like writing for a TV show or something like that.
Mm.
I always did little applications for things like that to try to get in the door somewhere else, like work at a radio station or something, so that it just wouldn't be your standard office job. Like maybe it would
Yeah.
be an office job or full-time job, but it would be going more in the direction of being able to be the talent on TV, or being able to write what it is that they say, having some control over what it is that the people hear, that the masses hear. So my strategies were really very weak. Like I didn't know how to live other than just having a job.
You also seem to obviously have a creative side, and it sounds like, probably a lot of these jobs did not give you that kind of autonomy and flexibility that,
Yeah.
someone who's creative really wants.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson says that being creative is a difficult thing because creative people, if they're not being creative, they're dying.
Yeah, yeah. And you feel
And
that
that,
way?
yeah. Oh yeah, I found that very much. I feel like it doesn't really matter how much I'm getting paid. If I'm doing a job that is taking all my time and energy and I'm not making what I want to make in the world, I don't know what life is about.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you paid me $1 million a day to just pick up boxes and move them from one side of the room to the other, boy, would I have a lot of money. But if I had to do that for 40 years, I wouldn't know what's the point?
Yep. 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 So what was the journey like from working for someone else? Well, in terms of YouTube land, there's still it is a little nerve-wracking that, that YouTube can yank this all out from under you pretty quick.
Yep.
But how was the transition more into, I don't even know what to call it, an influencer or self-employed, or what? How did that work for you?
It was a catastrophe. Like my employment history has been just a constant catastrophe.
Mm,
Before COVID, I was working at an office job that I really didn't like, and it was, that sort of thing, sitting in the
yeah,
cubicle.
yeah.
Wasn't going well. They weren't giving me what I needed to do my job. I kept saying, I can't create these materials if you don't give me the information. And they said, oh, it doesn't exist, so just make stuff up. And then we wouldn't win the contracts, and they'd blame me for that. And it's like, well, it's like you're asking me to make an omelet, but you can't have any eggs. So I saved up some money and I left that job, and I was doing Lyft and Uber, and I was, following passions and doing pretty well. I was doing pretty well. I was, you know, going in the direction that I wanted to go. When COVID hit, it just sort of destroyed it all. It sort of burned it all down. And I no longer had the money, although I was on unemployment. So I got quite a lot of unemployment. And I lost all of my social connections, and I,
Mm.
suffered quite a lot of emotional trauma from that. I didn't get the shots. So there's one point where they're saying, if you don't get them, you're going to never have a job again. That was extremely stressful. I remember that one, like that one still has an effect on me.
Mm. Mm.
And I was living in a city very far away from where I am now. And I just was there for 2 years after COVID happened, after the beginning of it.
Wow.
And things were not getting better. I wasn't getting better, and I didn't have the unemployment anymore. And when I went out to go do Lyft and Uber, people were intolerable. They were a lot worse to be around. They were very controlling, and they would say things that they know you don't like and dare you to say something back so they could give you 1 star and get you fired. It was like just this constant, like emotional abuse, constant torture. So I didn't have any way to support myself. And I moved back home and lived with family in a spare property. And
Mm.
I had absolutely nothing, absolutely no prospects. I was sending out applications, getting no answers, living in the middle of nowhere, not in a good job market. And then one of my videos blew up.
Well, talk to me about, did you, like most people I know, they try a bunch of things. Were you just sort of playing with YouTube, or
No,
what were you doing?
I was just sort of laying around at home, not knowing what to do. Like I just,
Okay.
I had like a few dozen $1,000 sitting in a bank account,
Yeah.
and there was some video popped up on TikTok, and I responded to it in kind of a lazy way, like I just did the, the scribbling, the 1 to 10 guys and girls thing, and then I explained to her where all the men are. I was like, they're all down here. You're ignoring them, right? And that one got 3.8 million views. And so
Oh.
when it started, it took off right away from just one video. It's I didn't put in any effort into like building a channel. One video just blew up, and I said, "Well, I have all the skills for this. I know how to do the graphics. I know how to. I'm a competent speaker. I'm funny. I can explain all the ideas." And so I just started posting 8 times a day until I got a 500,000 followers.
Huh. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it was a real weird stroke of luck. I probably would be working at Dunkin' Donuts if it wasn't for that.
That is really interesting. So, I mean, it's clear. Well, let's talk about integral theory a little bit, because
Sure.
one of the things. So again, my buddy said, "Oh, take a look at this video." It's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I watched a few more, and then I started looking at your big tables,
Hmm.
and it was like, "Oh, well, there's not only do you have like the keeper, sleeper, sweeper. I mean,
Hmm.
you're really clever in putting these things together.
Yeah, I
And
wanted that to be memorable. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I looked at this chart, and I think you can. I mean, you have all these little links where you can buy copies of it and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's a really clever chart.
Yeah.
Um, and it's memorable, and
The old one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And having so now I'm 60 years old. I've been married to my wife for 37 years. I'm a pastor. I've got five
Yeah.
kids. I've
Yeah.
watched some of their ups and downs in terms of relationships.
Hmm.
And so and then also I've had this, once I got on YouTube, I primarily my church was a lot of older people, older than myself. I was about the age of their kids.
Hmm.
But then when I got on YouTube, and that sort of happened accidentally too,
Hmm.
I'm suddenly much more contact with younger people, and getting the sense that, oh wow, this entire context
Hmm.
for men and women finding each other
Yeah.
is completely different
Yeah.
than the one I grew up in. And again, I grew up sort of in a Christian college, and so that was even a subset of the broader context of the 80s. And
Hmm.
I begin talking to people who are watching my videos, most often young men, and I'm beginning to learn, holy cow, these little screens and these social media networks have, and these dating sites and dating apps have radically changed
Yeah.
everything for people.
Yeah, there's a line from one of the videos that I made. I was, while we were talking, I was illustrating how this used to be, the basic expectation that most people, most normal people would find somebody and together, like put your efforts together to live a better life and have a stronger relationship. And the
Yes.
expectation now is that you just go do it on your own. And now you've got, you're
Mm,
doing all your own laundry, doing all your own grocery shopping, working your own job, doing everything yourself rather than adding to each other's lives.
right.
And one of the lines that I had from one of my videos, let's see if I can flip to it real quick, was if your mother had Tinder, would she have married your father? And that was from this one here, the what happened to marriage video. So I talk about how in the last 30 years, boys all the way from school age have had, they get treated like they're defective, and
Yeah.
then they get to in the work world, there's women are placed first in the dating world. The women have the advantage, except over, of course, the top men. It's like,
Yeah.
I've been meaning to make this video for a while. I'm breaking this up into six. There's top, mid, and low men and women. And
Hmm.
which is the worst to be is low men, and which is the best to be is top men. But
Yeah.
it's way better to be a mid woman than a mid man, and that's most people. And they've got, because of the way that things are going, like it used to be that guys down to even here would be reliably able to find somebody
Yeah.
to spend their lives with.
Yeah.
And now it's like you've got to be here or up, and then you have just your pick of who you want to talk to, and guys here and down are just like starving.
Yeah. That's really true because the segmentation. So I grew up outside of New York City, but I grew up in a religious subculture that was an
Hmm.
ethno-religious subculture. And I
Yep.
remember one couple, the guy was he was mentally disabled, but because of his position in the subculture, there were jobs that he could do within the subculture, like he worked in a bakery. And then the woman that he married she wasn't disabled. I would say she had a fairly low IQ. She
Hmm.
wasn't unattractive, but she wasn't terribly attractive, and she was just a little bit simple.
Yep.
And those two were able to marry, and they had a couple of kids, and it was kind of a disaster for a while. But again,
Yeah.
the broader community steps in, and these containers afforded better lives for people lower down on
Yep.
how many of these different scales.
Yep.
And it seems like what has happened in the last 50 years is that, and this has sort of been done by media, but by other forces as well, including economics, all of these containers have sort of been blown apart, and we're all these individual actors in an open sea. And now these links we have via these screens and phones, those networks are becoming the networks that are most powerful.
Yep. And it's really bad for us on such a large variety of levels. It's bad for you to look at the screen. It's bad for you to believe things you see on screens when people can change them to, everybody's got a filter.
Yep.
Everyone's using computers to change their looks. And then, like, that's a big thing with pornography and so on. The guys will look at these women that look perfect, and they begin to believe that the world is filled with these perfect pornography girls, and then they don't like real women anymore. um, the screens have created a dream world where people's expectations don't match reality, and it's very difficult to convince people to get away from the screens. They believe in them, and not only do they believe in them, but socialization is routed through them. And so if you want to get out of the isolation, if you want to get out of being alone, you kind of have to do it through the phone. And then you end up in a place where if you don't stand out as being superlative as a man, if you don't stand out as being terrific, it's going to be really hard for you to get
Right.
any attention at all. And then the women get all the attention that they shouldn't be getting, that they think is marriage attention, but really is, weekend attention. And everybody is ending up pretty upset about it. Everyone is pretty um, not enjoying it. Like, very few people are making satisfying connections through it.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, how we attack that, I still don't know. I used to just say go be Amish.
yeah. Well, and that's a few years ago. There's a guy named Rod Dreher who wrote a book, The Benedict Option, and he
Hmm.
was mostly writing to religious communities and saying basically your only hope is to go into is basically to found small containers
Hmm.
that the power of the container and the power of agreement of the group within the container will be what shields you from this this sort of avaricious, devouring culture that is eating our social networks and making us all tremendously vulnerable to those who are pulling strings, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. The containers are, typically religion,
Yep. Yep.
was the main one, but any kind of community based on identity, I think is the only way that we have to get away from this being isolated and attacked
Yeah.
by whoever's pulling the strings. But whoever's doing it, they're doing it on such a fine grain level that they almost have, well, not really almost, but probably literally have a mind manipulation profile for each individual person. So every time you turn
Yeah.
on your phone, it's showing you only the things that give you the feelings that will make you do what they want you to do.
Yeah. 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 So when you're video went viral, what went through your mind?
Um, I guess I was being very careful and very cautious because
Hmm.
I knew that there was some chance that I would just get canceled and get my accounts shut down for saying things that are unpopular because I know that's how it goes. And so I tried to speak as freely as I possibly could without crossing too many lines. But of course, I got a lot of strikes. I got a lot of videos taken down at first.
Hmm.
I even got one recently for there was this attractive young woman that's complaining about men, not treating her well. And basically, I took her next video, like I went to her profile, took her next video. It was basically her just showing off her butt and getting dressed in the morning. And I was like, well, you put that video up to get a lot of male attention so that you could sort through it and pick your absolute favorite one. And that's why they're not treating you well, because you're not meeting a guy who is going to care about you. You're meeting a guy who sees you as a way to break the monotony. That's why they're not treating you well. So I thought that was a really good message, but a lot of people didn't like it, and it got reported and taken down right away. And it's they say they called it sexual exploitation. I posted a video
Oh.
she posted. Yeah, isn't that unbelievable?
They should ask a few more questions about, please describe exactly the parties in the sexual expectation and what they are looking to get out of it.
Yep, yep. It was the TikTok in particular. When you get a video taken down, it doesn't have to have a good reason at all.
Hmm. Hmm. So okay, so you're kind of you're jobless, you're kind of out, you're just farting around, you make a video
Mhm.
because why not? The thing goes
Yep,
viral.
yep.
Suddenly you begin to realize, oh,
Getting a lot of
um,
attention, and I have all the skills that I need to capitalize on it.
right. So now in some ways you're like in that you're the little dude with the box with one arrow down and 3 hours out. Now finally, in some ways you are in that seat that you've longed to be in.
Hmm.
What do you want to do with your power?
That's a great question. I still don't really know.
Mm.
Now that I have the attention, I definitely want to wake people up. I definitely want people to understand the way the world works. One of the messages that I keep repeating over and over, and probably will have to continue, is that you can't change everything and then expect nothing to change. They they said, they talk over and over again about how they want equality and equal pay, and women make 70 cents to the dollar, whatever. I made all these videos about money. And so they changed the rules. Like they didn't actually work harder. They didn't actually start doing more. Women are not going into sewers and climbing towers and changing light bulbs. They're not doing the harder work.
Right,
They just want more of the corporate work. And even then, they don't put in as much time. Like there was a
right,
something someone said, it may also have been Jordan Peterson, about how female lawyers who are particularly good, they will quit sooner because they realize I don't want to work 80 hours a week.
right.
And this is, it's a very consistent thing with women. So men
Yeah.
still are doing more of the stuff, but they want for their rewards to be distributed evenly. So this is, it's creating a situation in which it used to be that women could go find men who make more than them because the average woman doesn't respect a man who doesn't make more than her. And now they're all going for this smaller number of guys. And the expectation before was men made more and shared with women, and then they, had equal lives. And now the expectation is that we earn equal, but men still pay the same amount. And that's I mean, I find that personally very insulting, that
Mhm.
you're gonna get a job over me because you're a woman and not because you're better at it. And then when I don't have a job, you're gonna say you're not good enough for me because you don't have a job. And this isn't because you beat me for the job, it's because someone said we need to hire a woman.
Right.
So that whole thing, that's been emotionally draining on me for quite some time. And it's really getting to men. There's a lot of men just checking out and becoming apathetic and just turning to pornography and video games and not really doing much with their lives because of it. So
Yeah.
this is something that I repeat over and over and over again. I made a lot of videos about money this week, and I was just like, you know, there was that government help one, the one about dating down, about how women wanted this, to be put on a pedestal,
Yeah.
and then they get on a pedestal. And there was one girl in particular who said that she was afraid of these men because they might retaliate. So I drew here a retaliation blocker.
Hmm.
So they artificially put men in a place where they're helpless and then called them dangerous too, because then when you make that accusation, then you can do whatever bad thing to them you want. And that's not a world that I want to live in. That's a world that makes me want to escape or hide or just find some kind of drug or something. And, I don't know how many people out there are going through that right now, but it seems to be getting pretty popular.
There's a
So,
lot
yeah.
of um, in our culture, there's a lot of confidence in the market. Do you
Yeah.
think some of these forces will eventually be corrected by the market, or
I don't think we have a market.
okay,
I think that's an absolute fiction. I
okay.
think that the way that something's going on here. The way that these opportunities and the way that money and power are distributed is it doesn't respond to market forces,
Hmm.
because it's like I saw some graphic somewhere that said 94% of people hired this year were DEI hires or something in corporate environments.
Wow.
And I was like, that seems pretty extreme. That
Yeah.
seems like it seems like there's an entire section of the population that's being told to basically go to hell. And no one's noticing. And if you complain about it, they just tell you to shut up. So, to answer the question as directly as possible, one of the things I want to do with my account is to get people to get it. Just, do
Hmm.
you understand at least the situation that you're in? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know why that there was this one video I meant to respond to about this older woman saying, young white men seem to be checked out of society. And she's like, why is that? It's probably the video games. And it's like, you told them they're not allowed to do anything. Whenever they go to participate in everything, they get told this opportunity is not for you. So what are they going to do? Play video games. Getting through to them seems very difficult. So repeating that message over and over is something that I'm definitely trying to do. I also want to, I want to send men the message that the only option you have is to improve your own abilities
Hmm.
and to improve your quality as a man. And the only option you have as a woman is to don't listen to men. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I like you," but they don't always. So,
Hmm.
I hoped that this one would, it always is very satisfying to me when somebody gets to me and tells me that something that I drew or wrote for them uh, changed the way that they thought. And
Hmm.
several people in particular told me that this section right here, the negative attachment on the
Hmm.
male sexual desire scale,
Yeah.
she was like, I didn't know men felt negative attachment to women they slept with. And it's like, yeah, no, we cannot like you at all and still do that.
Right.
And
That's because
there
women
was
don't do that.
right.
Men do.
Right. And that's where the whole levels of consciousness thing comes in. Like, you have to understand that not everyone thinks the way that you do.
Right.
And most people cannot process that. There was also a friend I had who told me that she showed my videos to a friend of hers, and she saw this right here where it says, I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 weeks, which
Hmm.
is, a typical thing that a guy might tell a girl that he has in the for now category.
Right.
And she said that the guy she was seeing said that exact same thing to her 3 days ago. And so she just closed the window and texted the guy and broke up with him. So that's always very satisfying to me
Yeah.
when I can get through to somebody and they go, "Oh, men don't think like me. I'm categorized as this. Women don't think like me. I'm not going to get out of the friend zone by being nicer and doing her more favors. I've got to actually go get in shape and do something powerful with my life."
Yeah.
Getting through to people is what I want to do. Now, what I want to get through to them is a much longer story.
Yeah. Do you think that, there's also now, so we're looking at this crisis in terms of people finding each other,
Mhm.
and then there's a crisis in terms of, I mean, it's really interesting that you found you found plenty of material to work from on TikTok and
Yep.
on social media. I mean, people are just out there saying it, and it's like, oh, okay, well, here.
Yeah, here's yeah.
Now, a lot of other people are also looking at this and saying the inability of men and women to find each other and create stable pair bonds. We can say it in sort of
Yep.
we could also say it in something like a satisfying marriage. Is also connected with now the current anxiety is no longer obviously um, population explosion, but population collapse.
Right. That was a quick turnaround, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Um, what where do you think let me slow down and phrase this. So you are advising men, and I think you're certainly not alone in this. There's now in social media an entire industry of trying to help young men, get off the porn, get off the
Yep.
video games, get
Yep.
off the screens, go do something with your body that's healthy,
Yep.
eat better, up your relational skills, get more of an education, basically raise what you have to offer to the world.
Yep.
And I'm not sure exactly all that there is. I think it's more complex for women because I think there are actually men either sort of have the history is your fault, you're worthless, get in line and be a
Yep.
sheep, or
Yep.
improve yourself. Those are kind of the two options for men. And most guys looking at that will say, well, I can listen to these people and be a sheep, or maybe I can listen to these people and actually be something. So that's
Yep.
not a hard choice.
Right.
I think the messages being sent to women are much more complex and I'd say mixed.
For sure. Yeah, and by the messages I think you mean the propaganda,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And yeah, the messages being sent to women are being a woman is bad. That's like the great irony of feminism is that these women are out there screaming about I care about women, and they're saying don't do things that women do. Don't be what you naturally are. Go work a job that's typically for a man, behave like a man, and swear and spit and drink and just be combative, and then you'll be impressive and amazing. And don't worry about it if no one marries you until you're 42, uh, because you've done the right thing by giving the finger to the patriarchy or whatever. Um, those messages must be very confusing. It must be difficult to deal with that because I don't know what I guess what they think they're getting out of it is what they're calling independence, but it's like you just are dependent on your boss instead of your husband.
Right.
And I don't think that has made them happier. I don't think that's made women much better off.
No. Louise Perry has her blog, podcast, whatever she's got going on with it. She has Mother Maid or Maiden Mother Matriarch.
Yep.
And I've never really distilled a nice the phrase for the men, but it's sort of like suitor, father, patriarch, if you can
Yeah.
dare use that word.
Yeah.
Have you done much thinking about, because most of your videos tend to focus on the maidens and the young men finding each other and
Yeah.
maybe get to that stage of father and mother.
Yeah. So I mean, is your question like, have I thought about the
Yeah,
later stages of the relationships?
yeah,
It's I have less expertise in it. I also have less experience in it. Like my
yeah,
dating history is a strong enough set of experiences for me to have built a career on. I have seen everything twice. I just get what's going on out there.
yeah,
And I've seen it from every angle. I've had the bad things happen to me. I've been the one who did them. I get down to the facial expressions and the postures that people use when they're feeling certain emotions and certain exchanges of information. I get what is motivating people.
yeah,
I get what is motivating women to do this and that and what they get out of it and what they believe is going to happen to them in the future. So the being valuable enough to be selected to go on a date, making the date go well, and then what to do immediately afterwards is what I know about. The long-term relationships are like I don't think that I'm going to spend a whole lot of my time getting into that. Um, at least not until I have some
Yeah.
relationship experience. And even then, it's going to require kind of a whole,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to study, I'm going to have to get into all that sort of thing. And then I'm not entirely sure what my message would be there because my message as it is now is the whole like things are falling apart. And here's some basic ways to not be a part of the falling apart. Don't end up here. Don't end up here. Here's how not to do that. Um, and that those money ones that I just showed you, like
Yep.
be aware that this is the situation. I think that that's gonna be the focus of my message for a while. There they are, rather than here's how to
Yep.
raise kids, which I
Yep.
don't know enough
Yep.
about.
Yep. Yep. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And just listening to your story, it seems like while you certainly do learn from books and are well read, your conclusions very much come from your lived experience.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, there are times that my lived experience is supported and not supported by, things that I've read.
Right.
But there is a value to wisdom that is not very much appreciated in our time,
Yep.
where you can say something that is just profoundly wise, and someone will go, "What's your source?"
Yeah.
And then and you go like, "Look, just do it, just go live what I just told you to live and see what happens." And that's what happens in my coaching practice. I get a lot of people who will come to me for advice and I give it to them and they go, "Oh, that just fixed this whole issue for me. I've been thinking about it all wrong." Or I give them advice for what to do and they go do it and they go, "It worked immediately." And I go, "Well, yeah, I have practical experience. I know how to do this." Um, and that whole like debate bro culture of I can prove that polyamorous relationships make you more happy by quoting these papers. And then you have to read them and you got to look at the methods and be able to do the math and everything. And it's obscured behind these oceans and oceans of dense, unreadable information that, even intelligent people with spare time are not going to get to.
Yeah.
And then, combine that with the fact that something like 30-40% of scientific papers are just fraud. Like they
Yeah.
said that it's a scientific paper, but then when you try to reproduce it, it doesn't work.
Right.
It's the way that information is reaching people. They're putting stock in the wrong things. And so, yeah, to say that it's based on my own experiences, to say that it's based on what I know works.
Now you just mentioned coaching. So not only are you doing the YouTube thing, what other things are you doing sort of alongside of this?
So I have the social media accounts. I do YouTube and TikTok. I make videos. I put ads on them. I took all my drawings, all my little scribbly drawings, and I put them together into a book, and I sold that recently. That's
Oh,
on the market right now. So I have a little coffee table book here with
okay.
all my stuff in it. A nice
Okay.
little. I do the personal coaching, the life coaching, which most of it is guys coming to me with dating questions.
Okay.
So I've had people come to me with all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
Most of them revolve around dating, but some of it is just like, how do I know what I want to do with my life?
Hmm.
And I usually have a pretty good deal of success. Like a lot of my clients have breakthroughs on the first session, which is great. It's very satisfying.
Good.
And what else do I do? I got to open up my link tree. I've just got a bunch of social media profiles and I do the coaching and the videos, and that's the cornerstone of the business. There's merchandise and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, especially the coaching aspect, because I would say that in previous generations, people would tend to look to religion and clergy for this kind of thing. And part
Yeah.
of what has developed are influencers, coachers, social media. Do you have any reflections on that transition and why sort of religion was displaced and these new these new sources of wisdom are emerging?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I could manufacture a reflection on it. We did use, I gotta come up with one. I did, I do understand that people used to go to communities. They used to talk to their families or their friends, and yeah, in some cases, church priests and clergy. And they would do that in The Simpsons. Homer Simpson would have a problem and he'd go to church to ask somebody about it. We don't have faith in religion anymore. Religion is a dirty word. It's got a bad name. Like the word religion now means like a stupid superstition. Like you think that if you rub leaves together in a bowl, you're going to cause a lightning bolt or something. That's the way that people think of it. Um, People have transitioned away from finding meaning in tradition, things that come from the past, things that are held to be true by people around you. They no longer want their own roots. They have been shown the shiny future, the shiny futuristic, get the brain chip and buy the Tesla and here get the Apple phone. And leave all that old stuff in the past. It's old. Here's a bunch of pictures of old people. They're gross and ugly. They don't know anything. They're not smart like you. They don't know these new hip things that are happening. Listen to the new things instead. That source of wisdom has been moved very successfully and very rapidly from your people, your history, your past, your culture, your where you come from. It's been moved from that to this centralized sort of purchase on demand set of meanings that if you want to be somebody, you can go on Amazon and buy a thing and then you can just go be that. You can go move to a city and go be whatever that city does. And people are creating their own identities in a way that is it's very short-sighted, if you ask me. It's very short-sighted and it doesn't because it doesn't have anything to do with where they come from, it's probably not going anywhere either. And so
Mhm.
I think that they have been fooled into kind of like how you can give the ants the like poison sugar water and they don't know the difference.
Right.
It's like, oh, this stuff is better. It's better than what you had, but it isn't. It doesn't have any substance. It doesn't have any of the things that cause civilization and society to continue.
Yep. Yep.
So I guess it just feel like everything feels like a conspiracy to me, man. It
Mm.
it all seems to me like this stuff is all designed to turn people and their cultures and communities into consumable things that become like fungible assets for somebody. And so, again, if we go back to value and what is value, the value that used to be invested in families and relationships and lives and traditions, it has been liquidated through some sort of metaphysical sense and is becoming material value or at least monetary value that's being collected by somebody else. I see a indirect but to me indisputable connection between the loss of value in the individual person's life and the transfer of wealth upwards.
Mm. Mm. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Any, so you want to do a video about value.
Yeah.
Any other things sort of on the horizon that you're thinking about? Because you've got a lot of work that's sort of down here by the knitting, how to
Mhm.
improve yourself, how to understand the other
Mhm.
side, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You get the value, you're sort of going up a level and saying, okay, well, a lot of this stuff down here is really about value. So
Mhm.
instead of being on top, value is sort of underneath all of these transactions.
Yeah.
What else do you think is underneath there?
One thing that I want to, well, here's a little collection that I put together. I talk about something called computer brain, and it is
Hmm.
just when people get exposure to media, how does it change how you perceive things? Um, you know, Being on the phone so much is like constantly having pizza and ice cream. You don't want apples and carrots anymore, and that's changing. What you expect from people and from
Yeah.
your lives. I want to do something on that, on just the way that technology is like obesity for your mind. There's this one, what do you know? I want to use the drawing skills, the depiction skills at least, to show people that what you actually know is a very, very, very small section of what you believe you know.
Hmm.
And when you see something like a scientific paper or a TV show that tells you something, I don't have it really fully fleshed out here, but when you see those things, what you're not understanding is that this is the like it's a news anchor who there's many steps, along the way. It's a
Mhm.
news anchor who is only reading the thing that somebody else wrote. Like this is what you see,
Yep.
and somebody else wrote it, and he didn't even write it. And this person got the information from three other people
Yep.
and didn't really verify it, just got the information. And those three other people, saw something that you were not there for, and that thing might have been fake in the first place.
Yep.
Like it could have been manufactured in the. So when you get this piece of information, people think like, oh, okay, I know that now. And they're not doing very much critical thinking. So I want to make a visual depiction of why you can't keep believing all this stuff. Like they're slipping in a lot of really bad beliefs in there. But yeah, there's a lot of videos like that I have ideas for,
Hmm.
aside from the just basic, here's a person who says a thing and here's an explanation of the thing.
Right. Do you think you will? So HoeMath is sort of one thing. Do you think you'll have everything under HoeMath? So is that sort of like an identity for you, or do you think you're going to start new channels that have some of these different levels of analysis and things you'd like to pursue?
I'm not entirely sure. I think that a different name might help make me more palatable to certain groups of people.
Hmm.
But right now, I don't have any plans to do that. It sounds like a big headache. Um,
Yeah.
it just sounds difficult. And it's like, as long as this is working, I'll just do it under this. And people will get to know me, for the other things I do too. Like people know me for dating and consciousness, and I'll do more than that. I'll get into the more philosophical aspects and the politics and all that. I don't have any plans to do that. I might do it in the future, but really I want to keep it being just one thing.
Okay.
And I don't want to break it up into like dating and exercise and da, da, da. I just kind of want it to be like, hey guys, I think I can see what's going on here. And maybe if you haven't thought of it this way, maybe start thinking of it that way. And I want to do that with as many topics as I possibly can and get people to maybe start a little movement of no longer listening to the dominant culture.
Yeah. Have you, um, how long ago was that viral video that sort of launched all this?
It was in July.
Oh, it was in July. So this has been really fast.
Yep.
Um, that's interesting. Because that kind of growth is, I mean, it happens, but it's fairly unusual.
Yeah.
Um,
It's more conspiracies there.
yeah. Have you now you've sort of branched out in terms of, because I see your link tree, and so you've got TikTok, you've got some other things going, and you've
Yeah.
got coaching. This is also often a critical. I look at YouTube and I often think about church planting, because there's actually, in terms of building things, there are certain commonalities that go over different things.
Mhm.
Have you do you have staff, or are you still doing pretty much all of this by yourself?
Pretty much all of it is just me.
Okay. Okay.
I've had a few helpers who've done this and that thing. Like I had somebody put the book together for me. He's getting 10%,
Yeah.
but I don't have like a regular staff.
Okay.
Um, you know, I'm not sure if I want to get into. I don't know if I want to have to manage a team of people to make this bigger.
Right.
But then again, I'm also not sure if I can continue to grow without it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need counseling on that.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean your channel's not really even a year old, and
Hmm.
it's already pretty sizable. And
Hmm.
what I often see is exactly what you said. People have a degree of success doing something and they enjoy it, and then scale hits, and now suddenly they have to make decisions,
Hmm.
because it's hard to you still just have certain number of hours of consciousness and energy every day. And then if you
Hmm.
want to see the thing to continue to grow, but very quickly what happens is once you start involving yourself and staff, yada, yada, yada. Now you're no longer creating and processing and doing the things that you really enjoy doing, which sort of
Right.
brought you success. Now suddenly you're a manager.
Hmm.
Or you
Yeah.
hire a manager and then it's like, wait a minute, who's really directing this train?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And that's not an attractive prospect to me.
I mean, you have some inklings of where you'd like to go next, and given the fact that this just sort of happened, do you have any kind of plan in terms of where you'd like to go, or are you pretty much taking it one step at a time?
One step at a time.
Yep. Yep.
I'm going to keep doing things that work. I'm going to keep trying new things. I've got a service called Level Check, which
Oh,
is becoming Self Max, and it's a levelcheck.ai, and it is a an AI test that was designed by a couple of developers to tell you which one of the psychological levels that you're on.
huh.
So it asks you a bunch of questions and you answer them, and then the AI reads your answer and tries to push you a little bit higher. And then the highest level you can get to, it reports back to you. And it goes, you're thinking at this level, you're writing at this level. This level check is getting built out into something called Self-Max, which is going to be, I haven't tried it out yet. I haven't tested it, but it is supposed to be a AI life coach. So
Hmm.
it's going to evaluate your developmental level. It's going to evaluate your big five, and it might use the Enneagram and other personality type tests as well. You're going to tell it your goals. You're going to tell it, your history and what's happened to you, and if you have any, if you have bipolar or whatever. And the AI is going to say, okay, because I know all these things about you and because I know what your goals are, here's the best way for you to take the next step.
Wow.
So that's going to be a subscription service. And I think that that's coming out in like a couple of weeks. So that's a really potentially very big, like I might make all the rest of my money for my life on that. That's a potentially enormous thing.
Yeah. Any part of that terrify you in terms of, um, I mean, to me, it's a little. I mean, we've just had an interesting conversation about the way that these machines that we've created have sort
Hmm.
of really disintermediated male-female relationships, and
Yeah.
taking further steps in is sort of like, do we really want to do
Yeah.
that?
You're not wrong, but I'm hoping that we can keep the system functioning in a way that gives people advice that makes their lives healthier and more holistic rather than making them depend on the technology more.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the way that it works is like, hey, you know, um, have you thought about getting off the phone and getting some exercise? Here's some motivation for you. Like, if you need some motivation, have you ever tried looking at this? Have you ever tried looking at somebody who has what you want? I'm hoping that the way it turns out is that it always has the right answer for your problem,
Mhm.
for the vague set of problems that humans have. Like, I'm depressed, or I'm not making enough money, or my girlfriend doesn't like me anymore, or whatever. Well, given what you've told me, here's what we think is most likely. Why don't you try that? And so I hope it becomes that and not more like watch this ad for rum or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you've been very generous. I'm a nosy, pesky person that asks a
Hmm.
lot of personal questions, and
Sure.
you've indulged me wonderfully. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to ask me, or anything else you'd like to go into. I don't want to run out of time and not give you the chance to follow up
I
on
mean,
anything you'd like to.
I feel like it was a pretty good set of questions. I just kind of wanted to be passive and respond, and I think those was a good battery of questions.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
of course.
Well, again, I really thank you for your time. I think
Of course. Thank you so
um
much.
it's very interesting what you're doing, and now
Hmm.
these last few minutes are also very interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be continuing to watch to see what develops. So,
Yeah, me too. All
all
right.
right, I will end. Whoops, if I can find my mouse again, which wandered off. I will end the recording now, but I deeply
Cool.
appreciate it.
All right. I appreciate your time as well. Will this be going up on YouTube or
Yes,
cool?
probably next week.
Okay. Do you
Okay.
mind if I cut a few clips out of it?
I don't mind at all. You can take all of it if you want. I can send you the recording if that would help.
Sure. Yeah, that might help.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.